need to be thinking about beyond those four points? Andy?
Go ahead.
Okay.
You're ready. And
I raised my hand
Yes, Steve.
first,
Yes.
so sorry. And I think I wrote this to you, Tom, earlier today, but I think that it's really important to put a face on the issue. I think mental illness is so complex, and it often entails just really complicated health policy issues. And a lot of people still think that mental illness is something that does not affect them. And when 1 in 5 Americans have some sort of mental health issue in any given year, that's obviously not the case. It's someone who's a coworker or a neighbor or a friend, even if it's not you. And even if you don't know someone who has to deal with mental illness, it becomes an economic issue as well. But I think that trying to put a face on it, and that's always one of the biggest challenges that I have as a journalist and as a healthcare journalist, because we're dealing with just such sensitive issues, personal health, painful issues, that finding people who are willing to share their stories in an open and honest way, it takes a lot of time, but it's incredibly important, and I think it's something that is so worth it because it really helps it really resonates with readers and helps them to connect something that they think might not affect them in a very real way, to understand a very real how it affects people's everyday lives.
Rebecca?
I just want to underscore that. I think that is incredibly important, that we include the voices of people living in recovery as much as possible. And the Carter Center has a number of connections to consumer groups like the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, as well as NAMI, Mental Health America. We can connect to, but that is so important. And I think the AP style standards that came out 2 or 3 years ago were really the first standards I saw to emphasize that point.
I think one of the major things that people have to be aware of as reporters is to realize that a diagnosis, as Misty kind of alluded to, is not the same for everybody. You can have the same diagnosis on the top of a chart, but how it affects somebody could be vastly different. I mean, I look at Asperger's, for example, which is in the autism spectrum, and there's all sorts of different levels of skills for those folks. And also, we can't get around the idea of insurance coverage and being able to pay for treatment versus those who don't have that coverage and can't pay. And the different outcomes that those two groups have, it can be really stark.
I should also mention that Andy has been the president of an organization called the Association of Healthcare Journalists, and a member of that organization. What are we doing right? What are the journalists in the field? And I think we should emphasize there aren't that many journalists who are dedicated to mental health. But what are the journalists doing right these days?
Well, I think there's more. I think there's considerably more people who are willing to talk about mental illness from the patient's point of view. I can remember 20 years ago it was almost impossible to find somebody to be able to use their name in a story about mental illness, and a lot of them would not want to be identified. But there's more of a chance now for us to find people on the record who are willing to use their names.
And I should just confess, in the spirit of openness, that while I am a media executive, or at least a former media executive, I am also a person who has battled depression since I was 45. And thanks to very good diagnosis and therapy, I am back to my old self and probably feeling better than I felt in years. I am convinced that depression is a treatable illness. Depression is a treatable illness. I'm also convinced that suicide is one decision that if you take it, you can't reconsider. You can reconsider what career. You can reconsider where is your home. You can reconsider who's your spouse. You can reconsider, and these days you can even reconsider your gender, as we've seen recently with a famous athlete. But also, I know firsthand the importance of as many people as possible, and particularly in this battle against the stigma, to open up and try to be more helpful. There also, though, continue to be reasons why you should not open up. If it's going to cost you your job, if it's going to cost you your promotion, if it's going to keep you from getting your clearance in the military or in the intelligence agencies. And I deal with people all the time that I really would like to hope that one day they will not look at a question on an application that says, do you now or have you ever taken a mood-altering drug? That question is on there, I think, to deal with such things as cocaine and hard, very tough drugs. I mean, technically, my antidepressant, which I think I'll take every morning for the rest of my life, is a mood-altering medication. And so I would, if I'm dealing with it truthfully, I would need to answer that question yes on it. Okay, Ray.
In the spirit of the importance of words, Tom, can I ask that we insert another word in what you just described as an illness, which is depression, and probably all mental illnesses are medical illnesses. Given the shroud